Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beneath the Surface, an A&G podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke Hannon, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Josh Steppling, owner of treasurecoast.com. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm good, Luke. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Obviously, I had the opportunity to be on your podcast, The Current, which was fantastic a few months back, and had a great chat with you. We've been working together now, I think, a little over a year.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic to be able to now to put you in the guest seat and allow you to kind of have that opportunity that you don't have as often. Tell your story, talk about treasurecoast.com. I think it's a really incredible thing that you've done in a space that is quite competitive, I would say, of a lot of people trying to do a similar sort of thing. But before we get into all that, take me back. How do you get to this point with treasurecoast.com, and what's your story as a native Floridian?
Yeah, and well, I think I appreciate all those points, and I appreciate your thoughts on our platform and ecosystem itself. And you're right, it can be competitive. I think there's a lot of synergy in it too, which is what I like about the space. But me personally, I'm born and raised here on the Treasure Coast. I've lived in Port St. Lucie, Palm City, Jensen Beach is where I am now. I've lived in Stuart. So I've been here, you know, I always say for people from Port St. Lucie, I've been here when Becker Road was a dirt road. That's when I lived. So it's been a while. You know, I went to school up in Gainesville and I moved back. I have been I have my real estate broker's license. And so my background has been in that for over a decade now. But before then, I did web design and SEO and digital marketing. We've talked about a lot of this kind of off the cuff, which has been fun. We'll talk about these kinds of things. And I've always looked for a way I've wanted to find a way to highlight things in our community that make it special for people who are here that might not know about them, or for people who are visiting. Maybe they're visiting family, or they're coming here seasonally or transitionally, and ways that they can really enjoy the area at the least, or at best, just find a new way to appreciate where you live or where you're visiting.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think particularly in this day and age where there's so much kind of external stimulation, if you will, particularly on digital platforms and social media and all those things, that it almost gets tough to get out into the real world and really experience your community. I think I could certainly speak from my own perspective. When I landed in Port St. Lucie for the first time and then moved there is this kind of service level of, I'm not exactly sure what I do in a place like this, particularly if you're of a certain age or you're just starting a family. You might not know where you fit in with a community that's maybe a little older skewed, or maybe really heavily in the golfing side.
Right.
And it's not as intuitive. And I think where you come in is you give so much depth to those communities, and you show people all these different paths that they can walk, both literally and metaphorically, of if this is something that you enjoy, if you enjoy the beach, if you enjoy hiking, if you enjoy the outdoors, here are all these different avenues you can experience that with. Because we are in such a unique place with the Treasure Coast, you have so much at your fingertips. Within a half hour, hour drive, you can see a lot, and a lot that's really different from the next town over.
You know, it's funny because there are so many things, some things people see. You know, you drive by and maybe you see a farmer's market, and it doesn't, you know, you don't really think to stop by there on a Saturday or Sunday morning. Some things you might not know. We were talking to somebody last week about the Vero Beach Museum of Art. It's probably a 40-minute drive from here, and it's world class. If that was in any other city in America, it would be, you know, that could be in Washington, D.C., and it would be a world-class museum. And you go down to south of the Treasure Coast, if you go down to Tuckahoe or Hope Sound, there are amazing things that people don't really know about. If you talk about farmers markets, the Hope Sound Farmers Market, that's something that's still relatively new. Some people aren't even aware of it. And so, it's just finding ways for people to appreciate this area.
I think there are a lot of people trying to do that in some kind of singular facet of the best kept secret or the restaurant you haven't heard of or anything of that nature. I think what's so unique, and we've talked about this a bit in our personal conversations, is what you do with treasurecoast.com is so multifaceted. The ecosystem you alluded to earlier of someone can experience you on Facebook or on Instagram and then go to your website and find a directory and find maps, directions, reviews. They really get to experience not just a drop in a hat and a caption and a quick video, but here's everything that this organization is about, that this restaurant, here's what the history is. You're both kind of a gatekeeper from the sense of you're opening this community to people who are new to it, but you're also a historian in a lot of ways. Where you're keeping
a
lot of these kind of memories alive for people and what these businesses mean. What does that mean to you to play that kind of role in a place where you grew up?
Well, I think you're totally right. Telling a story about a lot of these places, even when, we were reviewing a lot of our listings that are on our website, if it comes to like beaches and parks. And it's very interesting if someone's watching this, or maybe yourself, check out some of the beach listings that we have. Look at some of the beaches in St. Lucie County, and you'd be really surprised the story behind House of Refuge in Stuart. You'd be really surprised to hear about some of these histories. Go up the coast. There's a unique story behind all these beaches. And not just that, we were doing something with Indian Riverside Park and Jensen Beach, and the mansion at Tuckahoe there, where they do music at the mansion. That was just recently. And learning more about each of these places, it's helped me kind of revive that sense of wonder about this area, because it really is an amazing place. If you look at the history of Fort Pierce, how Port St. Lucie has grown and what it is now, the history of Vero Beach or Sebastian, anywhere in Martin County, they tell you a story of not just how it all started, but it really tells you a lot about where we are today, how we are experiencing our downtown areas, how Port St. Lucie has grown the way it is, and different ways people appreciate each of those areas. There's reasons people appreciate different parts of Port St. Lucie or different parts of Fort Pierce, and what how those things came to be is an interesting story. And I think one of the things you'd mentioned was kind of the other, there are other mediums, other outlets, other content creators who are looking to do something similar to what we do. But, one of the beneficial positions that we're in, I think, is we cast a pretty wide net, and it allows us with our reach to partner with a lot of people who, a lot of people ask why we will help, we'll collaborate with, local food reviewers, like Baldy Eats, for example. Yeah. And that's, why do you do that? You highlight restaurants, you do these things. And to me, partnering with these people who are in the niches allow us not only to learn more about what's going on, our fingers on the pulse more, but it allows people who might be on our site that are more interested in the restaurant thing to look here. Look, here's another resource. At the end of the day, the reason that I initially bought treasurecoast.com was to make sure that the people who were living here, visiting here, had everything they need to enjoy the area.
Take me back to that moment, because I know, and we've talked about this at length, but you had such a unique opportunity, but also it was something where you were kind of looking to get into that space anyway, and it sort of comes to you.
Yeah.
And then what you've done since then is so impressive. But when you were in that moment, when it did come up for sale, it certainly wasn't at the place that you've brought it to. Did you know in that moment, did you have the whole roadmap ahead of you, or you just said, this is something I believe is important to our community and I want to see where I can take it?
No, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to create. I didn't expect treasurecoast.com to be, something that was available. I thought it was, since my background was in real estate, I thought that it was going to be some sort of real estate incorporated guide. That's kind of the way I pictured it. When treasurecoast.com came along, it was almost like serendipitous, because one of their main partners, who still partners with us today, is Dale Sorensen Real Estate, a local brokerage who, in case you're aware, they've got a really cool story. They're large, they're local, and they've partnered with treasurecoast.com now. It's probably going on 14 years. And so it's kind of allowed me to, I think I had a good idea of what I wanted it to be. I just didn't expect it to be with something like treasurecoast.com. And really what I think sets us apart, and we've had this conversation before, is not just having a website or a domain, but having that whole ecosystem, with the social media. Most people, if they are listening to this, they've probably been on one of our Facebook groups. We've got about 400,000 people in them at this point. And trying to bring an ecosystem where it's not just a blog post. You're reading our blog post, that's great. I hope you get value out of it. Most people, we reached, I think, 24 million people last year.
Wow.
Yeah, most of those people, they're going to be on our newsletter. They're going to be in our groups. They're going to follow us on social media. maybe they stumble across a couple of our blog posts or they're looking for listings on our website. But we want it to be a situation where they're able to get that content in any way they need. That value can come really in any medium that they want to take it in.
You make such a great point there, and something I'd love to dive deeper into is the community that comes along with all these platforms, particularly on the newsletter side, but the Facebook groups as well. I think you've done such a great job of fostering a collective of people who not only does this interest them, but they're also looking in terms of the net benefit of the Treasure Coast, of Port St. Lucie, of Martin County, those sort of things. And you do such an incredible job of not stepping into what I would describe as kind of sensationalist news. You don't do things strictly for the clicks. You aren't posting items that you know might be kind of high reactive pieces, but aren't actually aligned with you as a company or aren't aligned with what your intended goals are. Is that something, again, that you said from the start, I want to build this as something that can grow kind of in a natural way that brings on the right kind of people and interest the right people? Or has that been a niche that kind of opened up for you in a world where I think a lot of our news is really sensationalized?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because treasurecoast.com, for people who have been around for, if they're familiar with the website and its history, it was kind of a beat news type of organization where they covered, if there was a car accident or something like that. That's not something that interested me. I wanted to highlight things that I thought people could appreciate about the area. There's anywhere you can go to find, sensationalism, as you put it. You don't have to look far to find it, unfortunately. I mean, you can get on any platform you want. You're going to find that. So to me, it's kind of trying to think about ways where a lot of these Facebook groups, it's people who care deeply about this area. And don't get me wrong, if you've been on our Facebook groups, you've also seen people disagree on different things in our communities. We don't cover crime or politics, but we have had, pretty much, I think, every mayor on the Treasure Coast on our podcast. And those politicized conversations can be, people can agree and disagree about what's said. Obviously, we don't take a position. It's a way for me to ask questions about, hey, what's going on with this park or this development that's coming up, something that really will be interesting. A wave park coming up in Fort Pierce. We were talking about that with Mayor Hudson in Fort Pierce. We were talking with Mayor Shannon Martin here in Port St. Lucie about some of the new parks that they've got coming up, Tradition Regional Park. And, these things that are going to impact how we enjoy this area. So I guess the political side can be very a fine line to thread between what is political and what is kind of interesting to our viewers and our readers and our community. But the other sensational side of the coin are things like crime or just things that are negative and they're going to get eyeballs and clicks. It's something that it's just not interesting. Not something that interests me to push to the community.
Well, and to your point, that's a piece of information that generally you could find pretty easily. It's not something that takes a great sense of depth or effort or research to find. I think what you are doing is bringing what normally would be afternoon spent Googling, or now with your chat GPTs of the world, of searching and trying to find these niche things. You're bringing that straight to the forefront and giving people the opportunity to experience that without any kind of barrier in their way, which is fantastic. I would love to talk about your podcast, The Current, which you've been doing now for how long?
We've been doing it for, I think, a little over a year. I want to say last August was our first episode.
And you've alluded to a few times the conversations already, but the breadth of the guests that you have, it is a really varied show. And what's so unique to me is it shows how you are not only kind of something that is within the community itself and kind of a part there, but you're also something that is constantly elevating other members of the community. You talked about it earlier, of having that partnership, having that additional element that keeps your finger on the pulse, but also allows people to have another opinion, and kind of a second notion of, hey, we're going to tell you this is great, but here it is from someone who this is their entire field.
Right.
Have you found that those conversations have enlightened you in ways that you might not have expected, or in ways that maybe a simple Googling or even researching something kind of in a hardbound library kind of fashion just doesn't offer?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure that you can understand this being behind a microphone yourself, where I've had conversations, like you mentioned, we have everything from political representatives to people who are conservationalists to people who are hobbyists or local influencers, I guess you would call them. And yeah, a lot of those conversations are things you simply can't find them on a Google. It's just not possible. Or, a lot of people, it's like, you look something up on Google and it'll bring up some, I don't know, a TripAdvisor, or it'll look up give you a quick AI overview. Mm-hmm. It's just not something that it doesn't feel local.
Yeah.
And sometimes those things overlap. Sometimes that AI review, sometimes these third-party websites do overlap with what's real and what's true. Oftentimes, though, there's a deeper story. And that deeper story in these conversations that we have is something that's really interesting, because you find out not only what's going on now, if you talk about things to do, restaurants. We had Treasure Coast Mom. That was a cool conversation where she obviously deals mostly with families. And her big platform, I believe, is Instagram. But you find out not just what people are enjoying, but hey, what do you look forward to next? I've got 4 kids, so it was kind of natural to have her on and say, what do you do? How do you enjoy yourself? What are some of your itineraries? What's coming down the pipeline? When you talk to local politicians and finding out, hey, what's coming down the pipeline or what's behind this specific decision, it's different than what you can find in, especially when you're looking on like news websites where it tends to be subjective instead of probably a multifaceted view of what the real story is, if that makes sense.
I think it does. And I think what you do in a lot of ways is kind of get to the primary sources, which is something that are harder and harder to find these days, because to your point, we are getting all this really subjective news. And that's something I think that we've kind of come to accept from society. And it's not necessarily as surprising as it might have been a decade ago. But to say, hey, we're aware everyone has their opinion. We're aware that the news that you might get from this channel is going to be different from this channel. We're not looking to be kind of this unilateral, bipartisan, all-pleasing thing, but we're going to give you perspectives that are based here and are truly local and are truly influenced by people who are the individuals and the businesses that kind of shape this community. And I think that's where myself and you and where A&G comes in, is that partnership that we've had for now over a year. We found that synergy and that shared belief that these are businesses within a community that can help to elevate the community as a whole. Yeah. And there is faith that is required by our clients and your viewers and your readers to say, we believe that this company is good and they're offering real value and they're doing so with good intention. Right. And I think as you look around, that's becoming harder and harder to find. So how do you feel in that regard when you look at a company like A&G and the countless other companies that you work with? I'm sure you're incredibly selective with the treasurecoast.com brand of saying, if I'm going to partner with somebody, I need to know everything I can about them and not only who they are as a business, but the people behind the scenes.
I think that's such an interesting point, because you're right. It's becoming harder and harder to find. I think that there are more and more people who maybe see business as a zero-sum game, and that's never a way I looked at it. And it is very interesting because, we get emails every day from people who want to advertise with us. And I don't mean to say, like anybody, you're selective about the clients you take on. But it is important to us to partner with people that we know we know that if we can put our reputation with theirs, our reputation is in good hands. You know what I mean? I reached out to you originally. I don't know if you remember this. When we originally partnered, I emailed you. And it was kind of a cold email, but I was very familiar with A&G. Yeah. Being in the real estate sphere, I knew the reputation that they had. I didn't email any other pool companies. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? A lot of times, I think a lot of times, for me personally, we have a select group of people that we partner with. Those are the people in the industries that we partner with. And those are the people that we look to build our reputation with. I think that with TreasureCoast.com or with the business in general, it's been easy to look at things like, if we highlight other local content creators, it's very easy to say it's not a zero-sum game, because, if someone buys You know, if you sell cars and someone buys a truck elsewhere, they bought that truck elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Someone can easily come to treasurecoast.com, absorb our content, and absorb someone else's content at the same time. And there's really, you know, aside from some time and attention that was transitioned on their part, they can absorb both at once. So for me, it's more about finding the right people that we want to have on to, in the same way that we partner with people who advertise with us, trying to find ways where we can build together, you know. And with us, if we have people who are looking for places to stay, do we have a place to put them? If we have people who are looking for, you know, things to do with children, they can see things on our site. They can see other local, more niche influencers. Same thing with restaurants. Same thing with news. You know, we don't cover a lot of news. We've started to partner with people like Sunland News in Fort Pierce. I don't know if you've seen his stuff, but he was on the podcast and is just doing amazing things with St. Lucie County. We don't really do the new, you know, it's a little bit different. There's some overlap, but I think helping to bolster each other is the way that, I think that's the best way for two companies, especially on the content side of things, to improve and to keep growing.
Yeah, and you make such a great point there with kind of the dual-faceted brand stewardship, where we're putting our brand in your hands because we know that you're going to do right by it, and vice versa. We're not going to go and kind of create content that is outside of kind of the realm of what treasurecoast.com would post if it was out there on their own. And I think that was what initially struck me when we had our initial conversations. We were going back and forth of, you viewed kind of the role of how this content would be in a very similar way to I did, where it has to be of a certain caliber. There's not things that we're going to put out for the sake of saying, well, we have this partnership now and we just want to inundate people with it. It's like, we're going to be very particular about what goes out, how it goes out, the timing at which it goes out. And I think you can see the results of that. I know we certainly have, and the impact that that's had and the way that's allowed our particular platforms to take off. And I hope on your side it's helped to generate some good engagement, some good comments, because to your point about all of the parks and the restaurants and the political concepts that are going on in this community, I think for someone who's representing A&G, showing that these kinds of projects and swimming pools and backyards and scales, this is an area that has the ability to really be a canvas for these beautiful backyards and these beautiful areas. And you don't have to limit yourself necessarily to a traditional tropical Floridian concept. And I think for so many who are moving to this area for the first time and they are trying to figure out where they fit in that, I think showing people that you can still be expressive in your own way and you can still bring your ideas and then take that within context of the larger area, I think it's a fantastic thing to be able to do. So while it may not be necessarily as accessible as a park or a beach in the way that you have that, it is something to where I think shedding a light that this is more than just a city in between Orlando and Miami. Yeah. There really is something unique here and something specific to kind of what's in the water, so to speak.
I do agree with you. I know what you mean. You know, to me, it's kind of anything that makes, I don't know the right way to put this. You're right. It's different than like a beach or a park or something like that, but it's another thing that, you know, does make the area different. It's another thing. It's another way for people to look at not just this area, but their home, where they call home, different. You know, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but
well, and we've talked about and circled around it, but the expansion of this area, particularly over the last decade. Oh, yeah. I mean, really the last 5 years, if we want to be hyper targeted in the way that we look at it, but there are so many new people and there's so much expansion. There's so many new homes and all these kind of things. I do think there is some element of the local community being concerned that their thing that they've grown up with, as you've grown up with it, is changing in a way that they're not sure is in line with the way that they always envisioned it being. Yeah. And I think bridging those gaps for people and saying, hey, you've got this great idea because you lived in New York or you lived in San Diego or you lived in Washington State and you came here and you wanted to bring that flavor with you. That's amazing. And this is a place that you can do it, which I think is fantastic. at the same time, here's all that Florida offers.
Yeah.
So maybe you can create a new blend in the new place that you're at. And it is something where you might have beach access now. You might have that as a lifestyle. You may view your backyard differently then.
Right.
Because you say, well, if I'm going to go to the ocean, I don't need to also have the ocean in my backyard.
Right,
I want something that's more modern, more clean, and more kind of modern art, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or you might be more inland. You might be in Okeechobee.
Right.
And you say, I want that paradise here because I know that I'm isolated now and I want to bring the beach to me. So it's one of those things to where I think if we can be educational, as you guys most certainly are, that's a net benefit to everyone. And if it happens that they then choose us to be the pool builder and they choose you guys to be kind of their source of this information, I think it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's interesting because I find that a lot of people, I think you guys do a really good job of showing the product that you offer and showing the different options that people have. And again, we had our podcast, so I guess we talked a bit about the process of it, but it is interesting to me how many people do funnel from, you know, if they're in the groups or if they're engaging with some of the beautiful stuff that you guys put out, because it is stunning content. It really is. But it is interesting how many of them will funnel, like if you check analytics, how many of them really do funnel through the ecosystem. And that to me is really important because the people that we partner with, as you know, are all over that ecosystem. We don't plug and play and put some people here, and we'll kind of, okay, well, we'll throw you in because you'll pay for this. So we'll put you in here because it's extra money in our pocket. You know, it's just, that's not a way that we look at it.
Yeah.
And so I can appreciate that people are kind of going through the ecosystem and learning more about not just like, okay, how are we going to enjoy this? But if they aren't yet calling this place home, or even if they already do and they're looking to get a pool or something, they have that option. That's really interesting that you brought up Okeechobee, because the gears are turning in my head. Like if someone's in out west versus if they're right on Hutchinson Island, I could see how their mind is different. They're going to come up with something. I could see someone out west, they want like it's like an all-inclusive resort style.
Exactly. And that's kind of the unique thing with what we have the opportunity to do as a custom builder is to take exactly what's in their head and help realize that and make it be tailor-made to that individual. But at the same time, I don't think you're doing something all that different. Yeah, I think what you're doing from the standpoint of providing all these different avenues, you're kind of setting out the menu, so to speak, of like, here are all your options.
Right.
And then you're allowing people to say, well, I'm further from the beach. I'd love to know more about the beaches because I only get to go 5 or 10 times a year. Whereas someone who lives on the beaches, maybe they want to see botanical gardens, or maybe they want to see an art museum, or maybe they want a new restaurant that's outside of their general fare. I think that's kind of the amazing thing that you have is kind of this endless color palette that you can say whatever direction you want to go, whatever suits your eye, whatever is kind of intriguing to you, you have something to offer there, as opposed to being so singular and so niche. And if you don't like this particular content, then we're not the place for you. You do such a beautiful job of making it all encompassing while still making it really a living, breathing organism, far more than a corporation or something of that nature.
Yeah, I appreciate that because we do try to, I know that there's a lot of, fortunately, because most people come into treasurecoast.com, the ecosystem in one way or another, they see, they're there about some blog post about playgrounds in an area, or they see a video of the playground on, social media, or, you get in the ecosystem one way, and it's easier to digest than going through each of the branches of the tree individually. But that is, for us, we do want it to be like a living, breathing thing where it's constantly being updated. And whether you go to the beach 5 times a year and you want to find the perfect beach to go to, or whether you're like the person I was talking to, we were at a gala or an event last week. They lived on South Hudson Island, the north end near the jetty. They didn't know that the Fort Pierce Aquarium or the St. Louis County Aquarium was there. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I just took my son there a couple weeks ago. Look at the video. It was on treasurecoast.com. You're not following us? You didn't see this? I'm going like, it's literally a half mile from where you're living. And, but it is funny whether you're visiting or whether maybe you live out towards tradition and you don't get to the beach all the time. or whether it's right there and it's right under your nose. I mean, we're all guilty of that.
We are.
We are all guilty of that. You know, we just want to find a way that we can constantly improve the information that's on there. It's not getting stale, and it's providing value.
I think you do a fantastic job. One final question before you leave, and I'm
Sure.
so curious because you have this lifelong experience now, being so deeply ingratiated in the Treasure Coast as you are. You've seen all this expansion. What do you think our next 5 years looks like? I'm so curious because you've seen every kind of small niche restaurant, park, you know,
Right.
all these things that are in the planning stages. But then again, it's still so unpredictable as there's all these floating elements around in the state and the nation as a whole.
Yeah.
With someone as in tune as you are, where do you think it goes from here?
You know, I wish, as much as I do like to think I've got a pretty good finger on the pulse of the Treasure Coast, or at least different areas of it, it's so hard to, you know, have that crystal ball and to think about what the next move is, because, you know, you had brought up growth, and a lot of people don't like to see their old town turn into something different. And it's always balancing that with responsible growth. Some areas of the Treasure Coast are more concerned with that than others.
Yeah.
So who knows? You know, it's tough to say. I do think that we'll see, especially in St. Lucie County, we'll see a lot more. You know, a lot of this Southern Grove area off Becker is going to be, it looks like it's going to be, you know, there's a lot of stuff signed off to go on there.
Yeah.
And some people look at that as a positive, some people a negative. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on from Vero Beach to Fort Pierce to Stuart and Jensen Beach about growth. And it looks like, who knows how that'll turn out. But I know for me personally, I just, you know, whatever happens or doesn't happen, I don't want to say I don't care.
Well, obviously you
whatever
do.
happens is going to happen. Yeah. You know, whatever happens. And to me, it's finding a way to, you know, of course, everyone wants their voice heard, especially if you really disagree on something. Hey, go out to your city meetings, be a part of it. Don't go on social media and say, comment on someone's Facebook post, get involved, you know. But from my own perspective, it's finding ways to just get the information out to people who want to hear it and who want to, you know, make this place better, and whatever that means to them.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for my conversation with Josh. It's fantastic to have him here. He truly is doing amazing work with treasurecoast.com. And if you are not following them on Instagram, on Facebook, in the groups, they are truly one of the best sources of news and really the things that you can't find anywhere else about our community, whether that's activities, restaurants, locations, or anything of that nature. I highly encourage you to follow them, join their newsletter. It's a fantastic piece of information. If you'd like to watch any of season 1, please go view those on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.